2 abdominal surgeries within 6 months time frame led me to my own incontinence issues. So I used to have no problems. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, if I sneeze and I'm standing, I might have a pee. Great. And then, oh, it's if I'm laughing and I'm standing. But if I'm sitting, I'm okay. And then it kind of snowballed. I was thinking, oh my God, I need those chairs so bad. And I didn't have problems, and now I do. Anyway, that's my story. Before doing Urospot, I actually spent 19 years as a teacher, as an elementary school teacher. So my background was kinesiology. I did my degree at McMaster. Always wanted to go into healthcare and decided to do teaching instead. So what I do now is a bit of mix of everything. I get to talk about the human body, which I love, and I get to teach. So there you go. And very passionate about women's health. So here I am. So when we talk about incontinence, we're talking about something that affects a lot of women. It's kind of the untold taboo thing. We don't talk about it nearly enough, and we suffer in silence because we think that it's just normal. We're told by our doctors it's a normal thing for us to go through. Oh, you're a woman. Oh, you had kids. It's menopause, blah, blah, blah. Wear a pad, do your Kegels. So unacceptable. And when you look at the data, you see that 67% of all women over 40 will suffer with some form of incontinence. That's a lot of people. And again, it might look different for everybody. It could be urgency, it could be frequency. For myself, again, being a teacher, I peed when I had time. So you start creating some bad habits. You do just in case pees, which are terrible for you. It breaks that brain bladder connection. We'll talk a little bit about that. So some people just pee a lot. Your friends know that you pee a lot, right? Fine. And you might start waking up at night. Sexual functioning might not be where you want it to be. These are all the body changes that we go through that our doctors will say, well, you just go home, do your Kegels, wear a pad. Not acceptable. And we can look at the data a little bit. So current wait time to see a urogynecologist in most Canadian cities is 2 years. So you have this problem, you're leaking every time you move, and no one's going to help you. You're on a wait list. In the city, we're pretty lucky. You can't see this muscle. And that's why we don't really think a lot about it. It is a muscle just like anything else in the body, but you can't go to the gym and just work your pelvic floor in particular. You got to work a little bit harder. I'll, at the end, remind me and I'll tell you my friend's little fun word for Kegels. Anyway, this muscle attaches to both your hip bones, your pubic bone at the front, and your tailbone at the back. And it actually acts like a shelf. So in this picture, it's the red line there. And it acts like a shelf for your organs. So your bladder, your rectum, and your uterus all sit right on top of your pelvic floor. It has so many important functions, but what I want to do is show you a video of how the pelvic floor works and all the systems as it's connected. And in the video, you're going to see what a Kegel would look like. And that's your first line of defense for incontinence, is doing your Kegels, help strengthen your pelvic floor, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. I should be able to just click on it or no?
I already opened it, so I don't know if it goes.
There should go. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get out of here.
Expert Lori, you help me out there. Yeah, I see it there. One tab. Yeah, there you go. So there's no sound to it, but I'm going to walk you through and explain. Okay, so this would be looking like from up, if that makes sense, like looking up. And you've got the vaginal opening and the anal opening.
Tell me when you...
Yep, go for it. Yep, press play. So the video is just going to show you the whole pelvic region, and it's going to isolate the different systems. And I'll explain as we go. Okay, so you've got your skeletal system, your bones, your vascular system, your veins and arteries, your digestive system, of course, your urinary system, that would be the bladder, your ureter is coming from your kidneys, reproductive system, and here's one of your layers. So your pelvic floor is actually 3 layers. That's the sphincter layer, and then you have the other layers that attach to the bones as well. So that's kind of how all of those systems are linked. It's just going to show you the cross-section and peel it all away. Eventually, there you go. God, I'm such an anatomy nerd sometimes.
So cool.
I love it. I think it's so fascinating, but
Yeah.
so now it's just stripping away. And now we're just going to see just the pelvic floor. So again, there's 3 different layers. So when we're doing Kegels, that's what we're doing. So that's how the sphincter layer would contract. And you have the layer that attaches, of course, the vaginal opening, the anal opening, and there you go. So that's all 3 layers and what the pelvic floor does when we exercise it. Great. Just kind of interesting to see how it all links together.
That's cool.
Okay, so do I just X this then? Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful.
That's the slide you want?
Yep, perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, awesome. Oops. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I mentioned, I know this is not a great diagram, but you can kind of see how it acts like a shelf for your internal organs. So many important functions. I mentioned that it acts like a shelf for your internal organs. So your rectum, bladder, and uterus all sit right on top. It actually controls your bodily functions as well. So that one layer I talked about, the sphincter layer, those wrap around all your openings. So women have 3 openings. You've got the urethra from the bladder, the vagina from the uterus, the anus from the bowels. So around those openings are that muscle layer called the sphincter. They close off when we don't want to have our bodily functions. They have to open when we do. Of course, it supports a baby during pregnancy, and your pelvic floor pushes the baby through the birth canal as well. So many important functions that it has. As Terry alluded to, it's also attached to your core and your back muscles. So it plays a role in keeping you upright and stable. We know that 80% of our elderly population who have mobility issues are very incontinent as well. There's a huge correlation between that. So again, really important to keep this pelvic floor nice and strong so we can have a longer, more independent life as we live. Your pelvic floor also plays a role in sexual functioning. So that's something that we don't often think about. Orgasms are just muscle spasms, or muscle contractions rather. So if you can strengthen your pelvic floor, you will be able to hopefully restore some of your sexual functioning as well. I'll talk a little bit about that after. So if that muscle becomes weak, there's a few different things that can happen. One thing that can happen is called a prolapse. So a prolapse is when one of those organs that's supported by your pelvic floor will sag through. You don't want to have a prolapse. It is not comfortable. One type of prolapse would be a bladder prolapse. They call that a cystocele. So that's where it will sag through. You could also have a rectocele. So a rectocele is where part of the rectum is actually poking through the posterior vaginal wall. You can have a rectal prolapse. That's where it comes through the anus. Women don't often have that as much as the rectocele. And then, of course, a uterine prolapse where the uterus is coming through the pelvic floor. Okay, so again, super important. It's the base of your core. It supports our internal organs. It contributes, well, obviously supporting a baby during pregnancy through the birth process. It helps us control our bodily functions. It plays a role in sexual functioning. And the other thing we don't think about the pelvic floor is it actually plays a role in guarding and protecting our body. So if you've got a yeast infection or a UTI, it has a protective state, and it'll actually try to grip around those openings to prevent the infection from traveling further into your system. So another kind of important thing about our pelvic floor. All right, let me see. All right, so let's talk about why. Why do we have these problems? So again, a lot of us just think it's a normal part of aging, and we don't really do a whole lot about it. And it is a part of aging, for sure. One major reason we see incontinence in women is childbirth. So if you've had large babies or tears during pregnancy or the delivery process, or if there was a lot of trauma with the birth, so fast births, use of vacuum, forceps, all of that kind of thing will create incontinence issues and weaken the pelvic floor. Age, menopause, and estrogen levels. So your levels of estrogen are actually responsible for your muscle firmness. So as our estrogen levels deplete in our late 30s, 40s, and so on, our muscle tone also becomes a little bit weaker. It's harder for us to build muscle mass and maintain our muscle mass. And the pelvic floor is a muscle just like anything else. So it will also suffer those same kind of muscle loss as you would, as men do too. Men do as well, but not at the rate that women do, and a little bit later in life. Prolapse, we talked about that. So you'll see some incontinence issues if you've got one of those organs sagging through your pelvic floor. One thing we don't think a lot about, straining and chronic constipation and chronic coughing. Those are two conditions that can lead to muscle weakness. If you're constantly straining to have bowel movements, so people who've got a history of irritable bowel syndrome, they cycle through diarrhea and constipation. That puts a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor and can weaken that tissue as well. Anytime you've had surgery, hernia repairs like me, hysterectomy for women, prostatectomy for men, C-section cuts right across your transverse abdominal muscle, which will also affect the pelvic floor. So those are some of the reasons we see some of weakness in the pelvic floor. And your pelvic floor can have two states. It could be in a state of weakness, which will look like incontinence or frequency, things like that. It can also be in a state of tension. So when we talk about tension, we have to be very mindful of that. And that's not something that we think a lot about. Tension will present itself as painful intercourse. It can also be frequency. It can cause incontinence issues. That's one of the things that we scan for. So when Terry, you came in, we did a central sensitization index. I ask a few questions to get a good sense of your nervous system regulation. I'm also looking for things like if people tell me they have hip pain or painful intercourse, but they're not really seeing leaks, that's kind of the trigger. Like this could be tension, not weakness. We can use our technology to help with tension, but we approach your care plan differently. So really important, you don't want to overtrain a muscle, as I'm sure you know that. Yep. So if you already have a muscle that's in a protective state, you don't want to do more damage to it. So there's a lot of thought that goes into muscle strengthening. And it's really important that you are under the care of the appropriate people who know what they're doing and not just seeking help from other people who might not know and may not be screening properly for these things. So we go to our doctors, we get told, do your Kegels, wear a pad, blah, blah, blah. If somebody's having a prolapse, they'll often get recommended for surgery. It depends on the level of prolapse. You can have 4 different degrees. Stage 1 is where you might start feeling. There could be some uncomfortableness. It will feel like a bulge maybe or heaviness. Most women with a stage 1 prolapse will not know that they have a prolapse. They'll be there for their physical and the doctor will say, oh, by the way, you have a little bit of a prolapse. Okay, interesting. Stage 2, you're gonna feel a bit more of a bulge and a heaviness, especially if you've been on your feet or doing something physical, you might be even more fatigued. Stage 3, you might be able to actually feel or see the organ. So just with inserting fingers in the vagina, you'd feel that bulging. And stage 4, it would be outside your body. So stage 4, we would not treat you because you likely need a surgical option. Pessaries. Those are devices that are inserted inside the vagina. Uresta is one. Poison Preza makes one. It helps support the prolapse as well. So that's usually an option. Medications for overactive bladder. So that will be prescribed if you go to your doctor and say, I pee all the time. They're going to put you on Mebetrix, and that's going to help control the urgencies. So that's one option. Pelvic floor muscle training should be the first line of defense for most doctors. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't recommend. And of course, we have Band-Aid solutions. Let's talk about that. Adult diaper industry. In 2019 was a $10 billion industry. $10 billion, women and men, spent on diapers. That's a lot of money that's sitting in a landfill for 500 to 800 years breaking down. And we look at the ads. These are insulting to women. We're adult women. We have a whole long life ahead of us. I don't want to be told to wear a diaper. And you can put purple flowers on it and make it look slim. It's still not cute and it's not sexy. Like why? Well, I don't want to wear that. And look, you think any of these people actually leak? No, they don't. It's stupid. Like I don't know why we make it look like these are sexy options when really there's more we could do about it. So treatment guidelines for treating incontinence will normally be pelvic floor muscle strengthening and behavior therapy. So behavior therapy talks a bit about restoring that connection between brain, bladder, pelvic floor. So this is stuff like bladder retraining. If you're that person who knows where every single bathroom is in the city, we call that bathroom mapping, you need to stop. You don't need to go pee all the time. You really should be aiming for 2 to 4 hours. That is an appropriate time to void. 2 hours if you're adequately hydrated, 4 hours if you're a little less dehydrated or a little less hydrated. If you're going every hour, you have a frequency issue, you can start training your bladder to retain more urine. A lot of us have had bad habits and we have trained our bladder to only hold a little bit of urine. So if your bladder is only used to maybe 20% capacity, it's going to fire that signal to go pee when your bladder's not very full. You could train it to hold a lot more, and really it should be about 60% full before it starts sending a signal to your brain to go pee. Other thing you can do is start counting your urine stream. So if you're peeing and it's not 8, I'm going to say Mississauga seconds instead of Mississippi seconds. If it's not 8 Mississauga seconds, you're peeing too quickly. You don't need to pee yet. So if you're sitting and you're peeing and you're only getting 3 to 5 seconds, you're voiding too quickly. You could be holding more. So a full bladder voids between 8 to 13 Mississauga seconds. Any less than that, you could have held it a little bit longer. So go do a little experiment, see how it goes. We also know that when people have only done the behavioral training, so just the bladder retraining, it works, but people stop doing it. And we see that if you look at 3D ultrasounds, people who only did your traditional kind of bladder retraining won't really see any differences in a 3-month time frame. So even though it's a great thing to do, you need to combine it with some pelvic floor muscle strengthening to make it more effective. It's just not sustained at that 12-month mark. So who supports pelvic floor muscle training as a first line of treatment? A lot of people. The Canadian Urological Association evidence-based treatment guidelines for adults incontinence state pelvic floor muscle strengthening should be offered as the first line of therapy for stress urinary incontinence, urge urinary incontinence, and mixed urinary incontinence. Again, we have the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, the American College for OB-GYNs, how about that, and the American Urological Association all advocate for pelvic floor muscle strengthening. So why don't our doctors tell us to do these things? They just don't. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. We combine technology with education and health coaching. And this is where Terry came in and kind of said, you know what, I love this aspect because we're not just putting you on our chair. You start by a consultation, which is complimentary. And we do that for a reason because not everybody's a good fit. Again, if you're presenting with tension, we're not putting you on the chair. We are going to give you some other options first. Then there's medical things that you may have that might not be safe for treatment. So we really want to make sure we get a good picture of the person before we would proceed with your treatment. And we use, the technology I'm referring to is a special device, and it uses what's called high intensity focused electromagnetic energy. That's a really big word for a magnet. You sit on a giant magnet. So that magnet is located right in the center of the chair. What it does is it travels 10 centimeters into your body to conduct an electric response, let's say. It contracts your pelvic floor for you. So it goes in and it moves in a conical fashion and it delivers 90 pulses every 3 seconds. So it's a 3-second contraction, 3-second rest, 3-second contraction, 3-second rest. In that 3 seconds, you're getting the equivalent of 90 Kegels. You could never do 90 Kegels in 3 seconds. That would be impossible. So it's a very fast way to repair your pelvic floor. And what it's doing is it's disrupting the muscle. So each time you come in for a treatment, it breaks down the muscle. Then you rest for a few days and it starts to regenerate. Then we break it down again. It starts to regenerate. That's what strength training is. You break the muscle down, it regenerates. You break it down, it regenerates. So we do that over a course of 3 weeks. And then we wait. We wait 4 to 6 weeks because that's when your best results will happen. We call you back to make sure you're good. And we want to see that you've had good results. So how it works, I explained a little bit. So again, this red line is your pelvic floor. So let's say you're having some urinary leaks, urgency, frequency, sexual functioning isn't where you want it to be. You sit on our chair and the electromagnetic field is generated. So it enables that chair to produce supramaxillary muscle contractions because it's bigger than what we could do on our own. It's more intense than what we can do on our own. You sit fully clothed, nothing goes in your body. You watch Netflix when you're done your education, and you can read, dim the lights, whatever you like. 28-minute session, 11,000 Kegels. That's how it works. When we talk about quality of life, because that's a big factor in why we're doing what we're doing. So we see that 95% of people in clinical trials had significant quality of life improvements, which can mean something different for everybody, right? I don't want to wear a pad when I exercise. I want to be able to run again. I want to be able to chase my kids. I want to be able to do the rebounder. I want to be able to go to the trampoline park with my kids. These are the things that we're asking. What are your goals? What do you want to see at the end of this? Because that is a marker of success. If you can now go run, we had a client who just ran the Boston Marathon, did not leak. Like that is the marker of success, right? That's what we're looking for. 2/3 of the people in those trials were able to significantly reduce their pad use or eliminate them altogether, which is also a huge quality of life improvement. The technology is Health Canada approved and FDA approved, and it's very research. So they were actually made in Prague in 2015. That's where these chairs are developed and brought to Canada 2017 and licensed by Health Canada then. And Urospot first location was in London, Ontario, 2019. So we're a fully female-owned company. Every single location across Canada is all female staffed, all female owned, which is also kind of cool.
Is it covered on
So yes, yeah, it is, and I'll explain that too. Yeah, so 11,000 Kegels, 28 minutes, 6 sessions across 3 weeks, and there's one side effect: enhanced sexual functioning. So again, we are strengthening the muscles that are responsible for orgasm, but we're also rebuilding the vaginal canal. So what you'll get is actually like a plumping effect. So it's like a hyaluronic shot for your vagina is all I can say. So more lubrication, more arousal, better sex. That's really your only side effect. It starts with the consultation. We restore your floor. You enjoy your freedom and you maintain your results. So just like any exercise program, you wouldn't go to the gym, once a year and expect to keep up your muscle. So we give you lots of recommendations.
Lori
we
does.
teach some breath work.
That's what Lori does.
Don't tell me that, Lori. So our clients come back sometimes every 6 months, depending on how severe their symptoms were. Some of our clients just never want to leak again, so they want to come back a little bit more frequently. You would never repeat all 6, it's just one session. Anybody who's here today that wants to proceed with treatment, you would get your first maintenance complimentary as well. So just as you know, you make sure you just tell me I met you. It's true. And I've got a QR code and I'll talk about the benefits. So I forgot, it said friends with benefits. So we work with a team of pelvic floor physiotherapists. They're all female and they work for another agency and we contract them in. So it's a virtual care model. You meet with them virtually. It's a Jane video app, so it's nice and secure. It's a 1-hour assessment and she delves really deep into physiology to explain why you're experiencing the symptoms that you're experiencing. She comes up with a care plan for you. We then carry out that care plan. So the women doing the treatments are trained to be physiotherapy assistants. They work under her plan. So a portion of your cost of the treatment, it's actually just under half, can be billed towards your benefits. So yeah, under physio. Yeah, or sometimes they call it paramedical services. Depends on your benefits. Mm-hmm. The chair, because it's not a person, it's a technology. If you have a healthcare spending account, you can actually submit it for that too, because it is a registered medical device with Health Canada. Yeah, there you go. Any questions for me at all?
Has anyone done the treatment?
Or been? Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, did you go not to my location?
No.
No. Kleinberg, okay.
Yeah,
Casey.
because we're our business in the West End, and when I heard about it,
Yeah.
it makes sense to go that way.
That's crazy, okay.
So, and it's been great.
Good.
Sexual function, as you said,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
different.
Right? I'm so glad you had that experience. Good. For both, yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. My husband was like, you are so squeezy. I'm like, thanks, I'm not, it's just there. I don't know. Like, I'm not trying, but if I did, he's kind of scared of that. So yeah, it's pretty phenomenal what it can do for you. And that was, now knowing everything I know, I didn't really realize how I was dysfunctional until I figured it all out. And I was like, wait a minute, like the painful sex started early for me. Like I'm 45 now. So that started, I would say, around 41. And I think it was like maybe 6 months where I was like, yep, no, that's not happening. And we always had a great intimate life. But it was just like, nope, that's painful. And where it was tension. And now I know what it was. And I know now what I can do to help that. And then of course the weeks after the hernia repair and that. So that was super fun. But you don't really realize how pervasive these problems are until you fix it. I didn't realize that going pee every 45 minutes wasn't normal. I would go pee before I left, and I would go pee as soon as I got home. And I was like, it's only been 45 minutes, but I really have to pee. I didn't. I just associated pull in the driveway, I gotta go. So we call that key in the door. You put the key in the door and you're like, I gotta go, I can't. And people are like, they're standing like this. Now I walk down the street and I see my neighbors like standing like this. I'm like, I have a treatment for you. Come and see me. But yeah, I'm so glad you've had that experience. Casey's awesome. She owns the Urospot there. Yeah. Yay, I'm so glad to hear that. Wonderful.
Can I ask you a question
Yes.
about peeing before bed?
Yes.
So I try to not get up to pee through the
Okay,
night, so
that's
I
good.
always pee before bed,
Mm-hmm.
whether I need to or not.
Okay.
Don't do that.
Well, I think in that case before bed, it's probably a good idea because it's actually helping you not have to get up. And if you find that you are waking up more than once at night, that's where we see dysfunction. So pre-menopause, we should be able to get through 6 hours without waking up to pee. Now, if something else wakes you up, a dog barking or a kid or something like that, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you wake up and you're having that dream of like, where's the toilet? That was always me. You find the toilet and you go to sit on it and the walls disappear or something happens or the toilet disappears and you wake up and you realize I have to pee. So if you can't get through 6 hours pre-menopause, that's a sign that is a little dysfunctional. Your pelvic floor definitely is starting to show some signs. Post-menopause, normal to wake up once in 6 hours. So you have people who will get up like twice a night, 2 to 3 times a night.
Why is that?
Could be different factors. So you might not be emptying your bladder very well. As we age, our bladder muscle becomes weak. So that's part of it. Could be things that you're putting in your body. So bladder irritants. I have a little card with some healthy bladder tips and some healthy hydration, a couple different herbal teas. So if you're drinking a lot before bed, sometimes people will guzzle water. They think, oh, I didn't drink enough water. I better catch up. Don't do that.
Not the right time to do it. I forgot to say when.
Yeah. So try to cut off fluids an hour and a half before bed. If you're taking medications, so I have clients that come in and say, well, I'm up 4 times a night peeing, and we look at their history. They might be taking a blood pressure pill right before bed. That's going to make them pee more. So again, that's why we do these consultations, because if I know that, I'll say, your problem is you're taking your amlodipine before bed. You need to take it in the morning. Do that for 6 weeks, call me back and let me know how you're doing. I don't want to put anybody through treatment if they're not going to see success. That's a disaster for them. It's a disaster for us. So that's why we do the consultation to make sure everyone's a good fit. Yeah.
How many treatments do you usually recommend?
So 6. Everybody does 6. That's actually a Health Canada approved treatment.
And then if you did nothing else, how long does that affect? Like when they did the clinical trials, how long was it effective?
So they did a comparison between people who did traditional pelvic floor physio. They also compared with, I'm not going to remember the name of the exact device, but it's like inserted internally and it's almost like a laser. They use it for, I forget what it's called. Mona Lisa, thank you. Yeah. It actually is not proven to treat incontinence at all, at all, but people, they're marketing it as that. Yeah, so the Mona Lisa, they didn't call it by that trade name, but they called it electrostimulation or something like that. So using HIFEM, traditional pelvic floor physio, and the Mona Lisa. So they did pelvic 3D ultrasounds at a 3-month mark, 6-month mark, 12-month mark. So the baseline and the strengthening, so before treatment, end of treatment, at 3 months, already you could see people who did traditional and the Mona Lisa type treatment were already dropping off, that strengthening.
So what do you see in the 3D ultrasound?
So you can see the muscle strength, like the fibers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can see the actual strengthening. It might even be looking like it's sagging to lift it. And you can see the muscle building, yeah. So what they found was 6 months down the line, there was very little evidence that people did the other two. The Mona Lisa fully off, traditional pelvic floor physio, you could still see some muscle gain. 12 months down the road, there was no evidence that people did the other two, but the HIFEM still showed results. So yeah, it's one of those things that it can last a lifetime if you are following all the recommendations. Of course, we have people who are like, I don't have time for that. I'm not doing my breath work. I'm going to do what I want. I'm just going to come back and sit on the chair every 4 months. You could do that, but it's going to cost you. So,
and what's the cost per treatment?
So we don't do per. Yeah, we can't do per because it's a Health Canada set pricing actually. So it is $2,000 plus HST. That's the 6 treatments, the follow-up, the care plan. If you are under the care of a pelvic floor physio, we write receipts for $1,085 that you can get reimbursed by. Yeah, it depends on your coverage. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So either way, it's $2,000, but you can get it covered. And we also offer payment plans as well that are interest-free, just to make it a little bit easier. And of course, If you quote this, then you get your first maintenance for free too. So there you go.
Oh,
All of you. Great.
Yeah. My tips for maintaining a healthy bladder: aim to drink half your body weight in ounces of water each day. Avoid common bladder irritants such as caffeine, carbonated drinks, alcohol.
Oh,
Yeah.
my favorite things.
That can lessen your sense of urgency and frequency. It's not that you have to avoid those things, but if you're going to have a coffee, sip water with it. It'll help dilute the irritants. So when we were talking about, if your urine's really dark, it's very irritated. And if you're dehydrated and then you drink a little bit of coffee, you're going to have that sense of urgency worse than you would if you were properly hydrated. So your pee should look like pee. It should smell like pee, but it should be like a straw color. If it's really dark yellow, you're dehydrated. If it looks like water, you might be overhydrating, which can also lead to other issues. Avoid peeing just in case. Bladder emptying should occur every 2 to 4 hours. Count your stream. The full bladder empties 8 to 13 Mississauga seconds. And if you want to learn more, our information is on the back, and there's a couple healthy hydration teas. So make sure you grab these before you go.
I'll give them-
Yeah.
chamomile.
Chamomile.